Ooh, I'm ready to go through this review. It's time for lunch. It's 1 o'clock. I eat a big breakfast. I can't speak. I eat a big breakfast every day. So that's why I didn't eat my lunches a little bit later, but still, I can't. I'm one of those people. Please tell me. I can't be the only one. Are you one of those people that you go to bed excited about all the food possibilities the next day? I'm that person. I go to bed and I'm like, I cannot wait to get up and eat my breakfast. I can't wait to get up and have my delicious cup of coffee. I can't wait for my lunch. I can't wait for my dinner. Like, I know what's for dinner tonight, and I've been planning this. I'm going to make hamburgers. I don't make burgers a whole lot. I don't eat a lot of red meat in particular, but I'm going to make some good burgers, okay? I'm going to season up that ground beef, put some pepper jack cheese on it, caramelized onions, homemade fries, that good mustard. Tell me something. I'm so excited. I gotta have some greens on the side, Gotta get my fiber, gotta get my vegetables in, but I'm so hype about this burger. Hi, my name is Alana. Welcome to my channel. And on this channel, we review books. So this book review is from a book that I read back in 2021. And again, I've been looking at my shelves lately and thinking, what would be a good book to pull off my shelf, dive into the archives, and give it its own dedicated review. And a book that I think that a lot of people would enjoy, but maybe a lot of people haven't necessarily heard of, is The Weather in the Streets, with this epic cover, thanks Farago, by Rosamund Lehmann. Don't fall. Stay. Like, it's not a dog. And so, again, I read this during the summer, really more late spring of 2021. And this is such a good book. You guys, it's so good. Let's talk about it. I like what's certain, what's imperfect. I like what breaks out behind the features and is suddenly there and gone again. So, The Weather in the Streets is a novel about an adulterous relationship between a woman named Olivia Curtis and a married man named Rollo Spencer. And Olivia and Rollo are childhood acquaintances. They cross paths again in adulthood, and they quickly pursue a relationship. Rosamund eloquently portrays the reality of leading a double life and the damage that adultery inflicts on the parties involved. Now, there are people who don't like to read books about adultery, and it is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, especially when you have a main character that you know is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, but you're somehow still rooting for them in a way. It's this weird dichotomy. It's this weird tension that the author creates or the plot creates in these types of stories. And this book surprised me. I remember when I read it, and it stuck with me. And it's one of those books that I will definitely reread at some point in my life. I remember when I picked it up, I was hoping to enjoy it. And I think that any book that we read when we pick it up, we want to like it. We want it to surprise us. But this one was a surprise. It's a quick read. Well, it was a quick read for me when I read it, but that doesn't mean that it was simple. And it's not necessarily the shortest of books. Okay, this edition is like 20 pages, under 400. Why didn't I just say 380 pages? Good grief. It's 380 pages, and in this edition, the font is not large. But there's something about the book that flies. Lehmann's writing is so good. I described it here as poetic, descriptive, and evocative. She will often meander between the third person and the first person in the same paragraph, but don't let that scare you. It's not confusing. It's actually so elegantly done that you don't even realize that it's happening, and you go back and say, how did she do that so seamlessly? Perfection. The narrative is mainly from Olivia's perspective, but we do get some glimpses of other characters and their perspective throughout the novel. So as you could assume from the title is relevant, The Weather in the Streets. The weather plays a significant role in this narrative. Lehmann is is it Lehmann or Lehmann? I'm saying Lehmann. Is constantly describing the weather and uses the weather as a device to foreshadow immediate events to come. Again, this is something that could be cliched quickly. Like it could become cliched, come across as immature very quickly, but not. It's just skillfully done. It's skillfully done. The rain had stopped. The day was dark, gray, cold, and gusty. One or two tattered blue holes blown into the sky for a moment, then overblown again. 2 days later came the telegram, meet him in Oxford. The meter, 1 o'clock. It was Friday, hot and sunny. I mean, come on. The woman can write. Throughout the book, the weather descriptions can be analyzed further beyond just the foreshadowing of good and bad. None of the descriptions are the same, though. Like, she makes each instance of this, each metaphor of the weather, unique in its own way. And I think that's why it comes across so elegant. And it's not cliche, because you can tell that the author took her time to be specific and precise with what she was describing and why. And on a second read, whenever I decide to pick this novel back up, I'll go back and look at those weather descriptions and really analyze them and pick them apart, because each detail that she offers is relevant. Nothing is wasted. One thing that I enjoyed about this novel, and that surprised me, because I wasn't expecting it. Again, some things you're not going to know until you actually get into the book. Okay. Side note, before I get into it, one of my best friends just messaged me. We were having this conversation via text about the importance of taking your time, as in what you accrue at work, your vacation time. Take your time. This is just a PSA, public service announcement, because this is not going to be a long review, but I'm a big believer in this, and more I am practicing what I'm preaching. So if you have accrued time, take your time. Take the leave. Are you feeling stressed out, burnt out at work? It could be life, and then you go to work and work is stressful and you're burnt out. Take time off. I don't care if it's 1 3-day weekend a month. I wish. If you take 1 3-day weekend a month, a Friday or a Monday, take your time, because the work will get done either way. Because it has to get done. Take your leave. My neighbor is vacuuming upstairs. Girl, yes. There's nothing so much. I love vacuuming. It's so satisfying. So this novel has an existential undertone that I did not expect. And I was like, this is so good. I love existentialism in a novel. Okay. So anytime I come across an existential theme, your girl gonna talk about it. All right. So many of the characters in this book ask questions about the self, how the self is perceived by others, the tension between self and happiness. And this adds to the concept in this novel that the outward self is often at war with the internal self, which makes sense in a novel about adultery. Because their relationship, there are a lot of facades going on, right, in this story, because they're, arranging their meetups and their relationship, etc., illicitly. And so they have to put on faces and pretend like something is not happening when it is. Also, there's also a moral tension here. And these characters, even though they're doing X, Y, and Z, and they're operating on a facade to keep their relationship secret, their decisions to be dishonest does wear on both of these characters. They are suffering for their behavior. So I broke this up into 3 categories to talk about, and I pulled 3 categories, three categories, for lack of a better word. I said the self and others, the self and happiness, and I used a quote for each one of those. So the self. Tell me, Livia, do you ever feel as if you weren't real? Often. It's a beastly feeling. Everybody has a solid real life except oneself. So the self and others. How do you know what you've done? It's all in the mind of the beholder. We don't know what we look like. We're not just ourselves. We're just a tiny nut of self. And the rest is a complicated mass of unknown quantities, according to who's looking at us. The self and happiness. What do people mean about being happy? There's so much talk about it, as if it's the one aim and motive. Far from it. Doesn't affect anything as far as I can see. It isn't the desire for happiness that moves people to do what they do. Again, this is a novel that could have been a cliche novel about adultery, But Lehmann makes it so much more complicated than that. And you gotta give credit where credit is due. And she made this novel way more complicated and complex than it needed to be. I need to go check out some of her other works because she has other novels. So, also, the author doesn't just focus on Olivia and Rollo in the double lives that they're leading. She covers the facade of wealth, class, and perceived respectability. She also glosses over the concept of ethics and morality in relations to one's profession. The most unlikely person often does unexpected things behind closed doors that would shock society. So again, adultery is just a microcosm of other situations in which people are shady. People are unethical at work. People are doing shady things with their wealth. People are doing crazy things behind closed doors all the time. And so she's just focusing in on this adulterous relationship to make a larger argument about society as a whole and the crazy things that people do behind closed doors that are morally and ethically wrong. Lehmann does not glamorize adultery in any way, and I think it's important to make that noted. It is very evident from the beginning that both Rollo and Olivia are at war with themselves for the decisions they've made, regardless of how much they try to justify their behavior. The author is realistic about adultery, and regardless of how unsavory the topic is, it is a reality. Adultery, unfortunately, is common. And I think it's probably more common than people realize. I think that's one reason why true loyalty, people are almost shocked by it. You know what I mean? Like, they're shocked by true loyalty and true fidelity because it is rare. I'm going to be real. I don't understand how people could entertain multiple romantic relationships at a time. Like, one is enough. Like, it's too much work. One is a lot of work. Multiple? Can't you use that time and energy for something else? Relationships are a lot of work, okay? Not necessarily in a bad way, but it's effort, okay? And you got multiple. Let's get into a quote and then we're going to wrap this up. There was this inward double living under amorphous, I have a difficulty always saying that word, impacts of dark and light mixed. That was when we were together. Not being together was a vacuum. It was an unborn place in the shadow of the time before and the time to come. It was remembering and looking forward, drawn out painfully both ways, taut like a bit of elastic wearing. What I also do applaud Lehmann for doing is that she writes about Olivia and Rollo's relationship in a way where you don't lose sympathy for the characters involved, even if you didn't necessarily agree with their decisions, or you just flat out don't agree with their decisions. She handles the topics that are involved sensitively, and she really nails both the fragility and the beauty of relationships, because there are other people involved. Rollo has a wife, and there's a situation that Olivia gets in because she's with Rollo, and so she has a difficult decision that she has to make, and it's painful for her both mentally, emotionally, and physically. And yes, she got herself in this situation. She consented. However, you still feel bad for her because she's the mistress in this situation. So she's going to get the shortest end of the stick because, Rollo still had a lot to do with this as well. I mean, it takes two to tango, but you still sympathize with these characters. And, all in all, the author just handles it gracefully. You sympathize with them even though you don't condone them. That's what I'm trying to say. This is one of those books that I remember when I was reading it, I did not want to put it down. I just consumed it. Like I remember reading this during my lunch breaks at work, and I would just zone out and I could just fly through the pages during my lunch break. I remember this book did not take me very long to get through at all. And I made a note here that I said by the halfway point of the book, I was looking up her other novels. She is a fantastic writer. Her writing is stunning. Her character is complex, and she's willing to write eloquently about topics that are taboo or uncomfortable. And I'm going to see what she's written. I need to refresh my memory with her other novels. I'm getting tongue-tied. But I gave this a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed it. If this is one of those under the radar books, pick it up. if you're listening to this review, or you've listened to this review and you're like, this sounds like something I might get on with, pick it up, okay? Okay. Because don't get me wrong, new releases are exciting, and there are recent releases, and this hasn't happened to me in a long time. There are some recent releases I'm like, man, that looks like that's going to be right at my alley. That's going to be right at my alley, etc. But I haven't purchased them. Again, I want to purchase them as I get closer to actually being able to read them, but I like to highlight the books that, when was this published? They're not on, New York Times bestsellers list. The author's probably dead, okay? First published in 1936. Yeah, it's not getting the hype, but it deserves some attention. All right? Go check it out. All right, honey. All right, have you read this book? Have you even heard of it? Are you now interested in reading it if you haven't heard of it? Please feel free to leave me comments below. Also, feel free to like, subscribe, leave me comments, which I just said. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I get up to more book shenanigans. All of my book reviews go live there first, English. And I also post goofy things in the Instagram stories because I can. That's all. I will see you in the next one. Bye.